what was happening. So I'm going to just share with you. My heart's kind of just overwhelmed. There's so many good things happening, so many people supporting this church, and I appreciate Valerie doing what she does for us. And those of you that get prayer calls, members of the church, every time I get a prayer call, and Larry's the one that does it for me, I don't know who your prayer chaplain is, but it's just the right prayer I needed. And Valerie does a wonderful job in facilitating that, and we're going to be not replacing, but we'll need a new prayer chaplain come February, March time.
Yeah. So we're going to be doing our annual prayer chaplain training. So if it's in your hearts to take on that service, if you'll let me know.
Yeah. And
like
really,
to add 1 or 2 or 3 more would be
yeah,
great.
we would love to do that because we are in growing phase, so we might need even 3 or 4 more. But anybody that's open to that, and we've had a few conversations, so we might be talking to some of them. But anyway, it's a real blessing what they do. I also want to share with you Larry. He's extremely flexible. You need to know, and I shouldn't tell you this, but he thought he was going to be doing the chant next week.
Oh, very good one.
So that whole thing, which was wonderful, was extemporaneous. And I didn't call him and say, Larry, you're on this week. So it's really fascinating. And all these things are happening. Sue comes early in the morning to set up. B and Kathleen do that. We now have another volunteer, Cheryl and Rick are coming up the second Sunday to help set up in the morning because everything's here. So we are, there's so many blessings. And you as a group are making a difference. And this church building, see it? Look. This is a church building that's going on the property down there. Right down there. Okay, what is it, about a quarter of a mile? On Fennec Lane. Maybe less. And really, you see the steeple? And there is a park-like environment around it. And a labyrinth. Okay, so there's a lot of things that we're looking at. Lee came to me and said, we originally said maybe $1 million, $1.2 million. Lee came to me and asked me how come I said $1.5 million last week? Because we want to do it right. Okay? And whatever you ask of Spirit, it provides.
Right.
So the truth is we weren't thinking big enough. So amen. Well, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I just felt that was necessary. Because we are blessed. We are absolutely blessed. And it's a new conversation. It's a new building. And you are part of the legacy that's going to be here for the next 50 years. And they're going to talk about you 40, 50 years from now. Think about that. We might even, if you're the one that wins the lottery, we might even name the building after you. So anyway, but thank you. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your love. And the love is here. I don't know about you, but when I walk in, the room is just vibrating. So anyway, I need to get to what we're going to talk about today so that he can turn the camera on.
It's already on.
Is it really? You're kidding me.
No.
What am I going to do? Uh-oh.
It was on the menu.
Straight into the person that's going to help us get the church.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. That's amazing.
It's all part of the message.
That's right.
The topic this morning is all are called and not everyone listens. Now that's a verse from, it's actually from Matthew 22:14. In the article this week I had Matthew 27:16. Wrong reference. I don't know whether you've ever seen Strong's Concordance. It's a big book with every word in the Bible referenced, so you can just go up and look the word and see where it is. And it's print's about that big. So this morning I got the magnifying glass out, and I realized, and I would like to share that with you, because we are a Bible-based church. When I say that, we are based in the teachings of Jesus. Everybody there? Which means we're a Christian church. But if we're based on the teachings of Jesus, we need to know what the teachings were, not what somebody's opinion of what the teachings were. Everybody there?
Yeah.
So I really believe in digging into it and finding out what was said and the context in which it was said, and also what it meant in his verbiage, if you will. So, Matthew, you ready? The Bible says, now I found my glasses on, okay? And Matthew 22:14 says, "For many are called, but few are chosen." And that's one of those conversations you stop and think about. How can a God that is the Father of all choose only a few? It makes no sense whatsoever if you put it in context. Now it's at the end of a parable about a wedding feast, and a wealthy man, if you will, decided he was going to do a feast, and he wanted to have a celebration. So he got the celebration all together, got his servants to lay a big table. He had sent out invitations all over the place, and at the time that the tables were set and it was time for the feast, no one showed up. Everybody there? See the picture?
Yeah.
Now, remember, 2,000 years ago, we had a different ball game than we do today. It's like Janie's inviting all of us, I'm going to be there, okay? So, the whole idea was, what am I going to do? All this food on all these tables. I've got musicians, I got everybody set up. So let's go to the streets and invite people. So that's what happened, okay? So you're there. That's the context. That's the story. That's the parable. So what was Jesus trying to say? Okay? Now, and I'm going to say at the end it says, "For many are called, but few are chosen." Now what's interesting is Thursday night in our Course in Miracles class, I had decided to sit in. You hear that? I was in the background because Madeline does an excellent job. And they were reading, and this phrase came out, and I literally slapped the table. I scared them. It was, BOM! I couldn't believe what I heard. Because here's what I heard. Okay, and this is chapter 3, So many are called, but few are chosen, should be. Which means, now this is Jesus translating or channeling information, if you believe that, which I do. Okay? So many are called, but few are chosen, should be. All are called, but few choose to listen. Do you hear the difference?
Yeah.
So he had a table, and everybody was invited, but who listened? Okay? So you get it. And the metaphor is, here's an idea, here's something, here's the key to life, but not everybody chooses to listen to it. So that was Jesus' conversation. Now, Jesus never talked unless he was talking in metaphors or parables, because remember, he was talking with ignorant people that didn't know how to read and write. The only thing they knew is how to farm and tend sheep and all those type of things. So he had to speak in their language. That's also known as telling stories about an idea. Those of you that have ever been around a really great speaker, that's what they do. They talk about stories and then tie the story into a point so that we get it. It's called using metaphors. So here's a beautiful metaphor that the tables are all set for all of us. We have a personal invitation to partake because we're all children of God. Everybody there? Mm-hmm. Now, my Bible says we're children of God. We did that last week. And we choose not to listen or show up for the feast. Why? Because we've allowed the world to tell us it ain't true. Okay? And we're going to get involved in that. Now, I had a real problem this morning. You ready for this? My whole idea about what I was going to talk about was changed. And I'm going to explain, and then we're going to go back on that. Those of you know my daughter, Tracy, is a fancy PhD, counseling. She has been a professor at SMU, teaching childhood psychology. Everybody there? Mm-hmm. And we were talking, I heard about a thing called RAD, which is, you ready for this? I still gotta look it up. My ego mind won't let me remember it. because it's really so dramatic. And having said that, I'm going to pull it out and read it. What she talked about was reactive attachment disorder. Now, this is a study that was done about small children by a guy named of Dan Siegel, if you want to look it up. And I really, you're hearing it fresh from me, and I'm going to have to do some research on this whole thing, because it adds a new story to the whole thing of why we are where we are. Okay, so remember that. I'm going to have to remember that. Reactive attachment disorder. Okay? Now, what does that have to do with this? The parable here is that everything is set up for us. We literally have all the world that we want. And we don't show up for it. Everybody there? So all are called, but few choose to listen. I had to laugh in the article that went out on our newsletter. Madeline and RJ had a telephone, which is a perfect, the phone can ring, but you don't have to pick it up. Today's world, I get a lot of those calls I don't want to listen to anyway. So the idea is everything's coming in to tell us, but we're not listening, is a key to this whole thing. Okay? Now, I'm going to read a little bit more out of here. Okay? And I put my glasses away, which I shouldn't have done. Okay? This is all on TV? Wow. Okay.
It's just the internet. It's not real.
It's all part of the illusion, right? That's
Exactly.
But now, the next paragraph, it says, I have said that the abilities you possess are only shadows of your real strength. So we are far greater than we have any idea. And when you think of the word child of God or child of divinity, that means unbelievable stuff. And then it says over here, it says, you should know you have lost the knowledge that you yourself are a miracle of God. Creation is your source and your only real function. So our only function here is to create and bring in from the ethers those things that all of us need to live bountifully and prosperously in this world. So it's all there for us. That's what this is saying. That's what the Bible tells me. So what happened? Well, it says here, and here is the idea, the key to this whole thing is understanding prayer. And it says earlier, it says prayer is a way of asking for something. It is a medium of miracles. So prayer is a medium of miracles, but it says the only meaningful prayer is for forgiveness. Now, in my article, I had the conversation of understanding that we are creative entities. We are creating, whether we like it or not. It's kind of like we are a stream of creation. You're a miracle of God, it says, and your function here is to create. So what are you creating, and what am I creating? And if I have something in my life I don't like, somebody else didn't do it. Who did it?
We did.
I did it. We did it. So it's for some reason I was reminded of the emperor has no clothes. And they had convinced that poor guy that he had beautiful clothes on, and he was wandering around naked. Okay, and he believed it. Now, what are we doing? See, we're I don't know where these words are coming. We're barfing out all these thoughts, and then upset because we don't like what's happening. And we got to blame somebody else or some entity or China or somebody else about what we created. It makes no sense. However, it makes sense to the ego if you get it. Because the ego can keep us in confusion and believing that we're a jerk. And this is telling me, and this is telling me that we're children of God, we're divinity in expression, we're here to create, and that's our function. But the question becomes, what am I creating? And do I like what I'm creating? And if I don't like what I'm creating, what can I do to correct it? Now, this whole idea, and of course of love this week, and by the way, all these things run together because this information is flooding. Stuff keeps coming in. Course of Love this week on Wednesday, if you want to be with us on Wednesday or Friday night, it is saying that the ability to create, the ability to bring God's expression in is just like breathing. Now stop and think about this metaphor. Breathing is automatic, true? We don't even think about it. Anybody agree? When you stop and think about it, it becomes a little more difficult. Okay, so that's what's happening. We have a natural talent innately within us that is God producing itself. And our job is to create automatically without thought. But then we were born into a world that thinks and has to learn. And as it learns what the world teaches us, not what Spirit teaches us. You got that? That's a big step. And this is what happened to me this morning. I'm going to explain reactive attachment disorder. Okay? And reactive, and some of you are familiar with this, there was a study that proved that a lot of the small children, babies that were in orphanages in Russia, they weren't touched, they weren't cuddled, they weren't appreciated, and they weren't loved. And as they grew up, when they became adults, they did not have access to understanding love. They did not have access to relationships. They did not have access to how to interact with other human beings because they had not learned it in those first 2 years. Everybody there? Reactive attachment disorder is that conversation. So, as a small child, if we don't learn these things automatically, innately, they're not part of our neural structure. Now, let's put 2 and 2 together. This is what happened to me. And I really want to do more research, okay? But to me, all of a sudden it came together that we are born into this physical world and we have reactive attachment disorder when it comes to the gifts of spirit. Because we've never been trained in it, we've never talked about it. Everybody tells us we got to struggle, everybody tells us we got to work hard, everybody tells us we're going to be a victim. If you're a female, this is going to happen. If you're a male, this is going to happen. When you get old, this is going to happen. When you're too young, and it's all these things we're told that have covered over that innate God expression that we are. And I just went, oh, wow. Now, how do I deal with that? And what do I do? See, we can talk about it, but the thing to do is how can I get back to innately understanding, automatically like breathing, that I am God expressing itself. And the key you just heard was the only meaningful prayer is forgiveness. Forgiveness of what? That I messed it up. That I'm running around like the emperor without any clothes, thinking that everything's okay. And I continue to be upset, angry, in conflict. Can you create peace with conflict? It's impossible. But people are out marching against things, which is conflict by name.
Right.
So how can you create peace with conflict until you give up upset, until you give up anger, until you decide that relationships are going to work out? Because relationships is a big issue, yes? I don't know about you, but I have that. No, I don't. Yeah, I do. Yeah, guilty. So we're working with all this stuff to overcome, you ready? Reactive attachment disorder about who we are as a child of God. And when we use the term child of God, immediately, not me, that's somebody else. Now, the second step then is, the first step is for forgiveness. I did Ho'oponopono. And in your bulletins, there's Ho'oponopono story again. Okay, I love you, Spirit. I'm sorry that I created the mess that I'm in. Because nobody did it to me. You know, the husband, the wife, nobody did it to you. I'm not going to talk about politics. But nobody does anything to us. We create our own world. Okay? So I forgive that. Please forgive me and get rid of the patterns that created it. And then thank you, which is the completion. So that's the ultimate prayer, in my opinion. Okay? Second step is then create a new world by making a direct connection back so that my neural structure starts creating a connection with God, or spirit, or source, or the universe, or whatever you wish to call it. You can call it, there's many names for God, doesn't matter. Okay? So those two steps, and then saying thank you for who I really am. Do you ever notice there's people in life that kind of sail through life? Maybe it's because they made the connection. Now, there's a lot of ancient wisdom, and a couple of weeks ago, one of our board members brought this book to me, The Tao of Leadership. This is Lao Tzu's, The Tao Te Ching, and this was written in the 5th century BC for one of the rulers of China. Anybody agree? And if you understand, they have their religion, the Tao, okay? So, and the Tao by definition is the great unknown. There isn't anything you can know about God, because God is unavailable as far as understanding. All we have to do is make the connection. And on, I put them down somewhere there. Okay? So again, this came in, and this is part of the, see, these things keep adding up. And I will tell you right on, no, this is the one I see. I got mine here. This is the one I want. And this is actually what's called idea number 5. It says equal treatment. I want to read this. Now, this is a philosopher 500 years before BC, okay? And it says, natural law is blind, its justice even-handed, which means there's an energy in the universe which is creative. Well, you can call that source, you can call that God, whatever you do. And it's blind, okay? It's just because we don't know doesn't mean we are exempt from it. It's like somebody that's speeding said, oh, I didn't know the speed limit was 70 here, or whatever. Doesn't matter, you still get a ticket. And then it goes on and says, the consequences of one's behavior are inescapable. In other words, you create what you do. You create what you think. And your action, what is it? Your words speak louder than what you say. Okay? So we are at the expression of what we're thinking. Then it goes on and says, the wise leader does not try to protect people from themselves. Folks, everybody take a deep breath. We all screw up. We make mistakes. I have kids that make mistakes. Anybody agree with that? I've made mistakes. So we are human, but there's no excuse for that, which is the next one. The light of awareness shines equally on what is pleasant and on what is not pleasant. So the light means that what I see is what I have created, and the light of awareness is on it, and it's up to me to do something with it. Hello? I mean, this is amazing stuff. Then it goes on and says, people are not better than the rest of creation. So we're all the same, and the creation is the same, and all creation is occurring, and we are the perpetrators of creation. So you are holding this universe together. You're holding even that chair together in your belief that it's a chair. I know it's a little radical, but that's okay. Now, neither is one person or one people better than the rest of humanity. The same principle is everywhere. One person is as worthy as the next. Why play favorites? And it looks like the universe plays favorites, agree? But there's one energy, there's one thinking individual creating their life, so who chooses what their life looks like?
They do.
They do. Now, do they know it? No. That's the conundrum, and that's the craziness. That's why I believe this place is a light temple. This is a light of humanity sharing what I believe is truth. Right. And not everybody's ready for that. The phone's ringing. And we've had people come in and people leave, yes? And anytime something happens, I have to blame somebody else. It's called projection. That's one of the reasons I'm just remembered this. In our membership covenant, one of the covenant agreements is we call triangulation. Those of you familiar with it? In other words, if you have a problem with somebody in the congregation, you go to that person and talk to them. Don't come to the minister. Don't go to somebody else. Talk to them. It's very interesting because anything I see in somebody else that upsets me, I'm the one that created the problem. And it's me, not them. Now that's tough, because I don't like that. Anybody agree? I like to blame other people. You know, it's amazing. I shouldn't say this. It's amazing what I blame Madeline for. Wait till we get home. But it's funny, and it's ironic, and it's crazy, because that's what this is all about. The Course of Love and the Course of Miracles use that we live in an insane world. Get it? Because we think it's somebody else creating our issues. And it's difficult to suddenly be aware that I'm responsible for what I'm experiencing. Because I don't want to know that. And that's a difficult message, but the phone's ringing. So I got a new saying, the phone's ringing. Are you going to pick it up and listen? And then you're going to change things. Now, if you understand the human mind, the neural structures that we were talking about in the reactive attachment, thank you. It's amazing how my ego wants to kiss. Reactive attachment disorder means that the normal patterns in the brain weren't there to make the connection between relationships. And they're trying to figure out how to get these small kids that are now adults to reconnect in the brain. And so how can we reconnect to our natural state of being, which is child of God, and forgiveness, okay, letting it go, and then quiet time. Because the language of God is silence. That's been pretty well proven. Those of you who have ever been in scientific areas know that they have think tanks where people isolate themselves in even sound chambers so they can't hear anything. So they're completely cut off from all stimulus, and that's where great thinkers sit to come up with ideas. Where do the ideas come from? Reconnecting to spirit. So we can do that when we start establishing a meditation practice. Now, that's a difficult part because when we sit down to be silent, the brain goes nuts. Why does it go what I call monkey brain? To keep you away from that. Because its job is to keep you distracted. Now, we're covering so many basics, and I feel like I'm just moving through it. But this reactive disorder, it just amazed me. And I knew I had a whole different message today. And the next step is affirming my good, which is also in here. And this is a Catherine Ponder affirmation. And it says, I'm a child of the loving Father. I'm the rich child. All the Father has is mine to share and to experience. And I'm asking you to say this 2 or 3 times a day. Okay, and then what did we teach? Spending 20 minutes, morning and evening, in meditation. Is it easy? No. And I'm not going to kid you because it's not. It takes time. It takes time. So, all of a sudden I ran out. I really appreciate you, okay? Because this is a stream, I call it a stream of consciousness that's starting to come. And it's amazing how we set a thought and the thoughts, that things start filling in. Because I've been looking for the idea, why are so many people flailing? Why are so many people failing? Why are so many people upset and angry? Because ego wants to keep us angry and blame others. What's a war? A war is because my ideology is different than yours and you're a jerk and I'm going to prove you wrong. And what's fascinating is how things come together for me. I'd like you to go back and I'm going to look at the daily word for today. And when I first read it, it just went out, right out. But then with the context that we were talking about here, the second paragraph says, I am always expressing faith in something. So faith is what? That neural structure that I'm connecting to a source. Got it? Then the next thing it says, either spiritual truth or dualistic illusion. So when I go into faith, I'm either connecting to God's spirit or I'm connecting to my programming that's wrong. Because it tells me I'm a failure, I'm no good, I stink, whatever it is. And so we are all the time going between those two things. So I'm realizing we need to create a new neural structure, connecting ourselves back to source, and we need to do the process to get there. That's what I mean when I say we need to do the work. Okay, and that goes on, I am grateful for the growing awareness that allows me to recognize where I am placing my faith and to make conscious creative choices through each day. Couldn't be more clear. Then when Valerie was reading it, I was going, yeah. Okay, and see, this is the truth that Judy's teaching. It's very subtle. And it's very, very true, I believe. And so I'm going to wrap up, tell you thank you for listening to me. This is a work in experiments, okay? Because I'm going to study more on this RAD, reactive attachment disorder. Because it's a reality, it really is. And I went, bang, okay? So, my job is to overcome that in my life and reconnect with spirit. And I'm asking you, if we join together as a community, you understand what happens. So, I love you dearly. You are the strength that keeps things going here. And it's your belief in what we're doing and where we're going and the difference that this group can make. Because your thoughts radiate into the world and you, in your own way, help with things. I was reading I just thought of something. I was reading an article by Kevin Trudesco, who is the president of ARE, the Association of Research and Enlightenment, which is Edgar Casey's group. And he said the thing people are ignoring is their thinking is actually creating the world changes. It's not the human itself, it's our thinking that's creating earthquakes and the pollution and the problems. And I had never thought of that before. So that's how powerful you are. You can make a difference, even reducing the earth changes. So congratulations. And the main thing is to learn the new language of love, which means we're all here to make a difference. We're all here trying the best way we can. We're all here making mistakes in that process. And we're all here doing what we think is the best. So I appreciate you for doing that, and I love you.